Another conflict traces back to British, the 2,611-kilometer AfPak border tensions. Recognized by Pakistan, disputed by Taliban. Pakistan Pashtun genocide worsens case. Here's why Durand Line is central to AfPak war.
Fresh airstrikes, cross-border raids and direct war-like warnings have pushed Afghanistan and Pakistan into their most serious confrontation in years. Fighter jets struck major Afghan cities including Kabul and Kandahar after Taliban forces launched attacks along the Durand Line. Hello and welcome to Xplained. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Today we're diving into one of the most contentious borders in the world, the Durand Line. Stretching over 2,600 kilometers between Afghanistan and Pakistan, this line isn't just a mark on a map, it's a source of ongoing tension, ethnic division and diplomatic headaches. Why do Afghans refuse to accept it? How did the British draw it up in the first place? Stick around as we unpack the history, the controversies and the lasting impact. Imagine a border that cuts through rugged mountains, vast deserts and ancient tribal lands. That's the Durand Line, established in 1893 as the frontier between what was then British India and the Emirate of Afghanistan. It runs from the tri-point with Iran in the west to the border with China in the east, passing through areas inhabited mainly by Pashtun tribes, also known as Pathans. Today it separates Afghanistan from Pakistan, but here's the kicker. Afghanistan has never officially recognized it as an international border. Pakistan, on the other hand, insists it's legit and has even built fences along parts of it. Why the fuss? For Afghans, this line isn't just arbitrary, it's a colonial scar that divides families, tribes and cultures. Pashtuns on both sides share language, customs and history, and the border feels like an artificial wedge driven into their homeland. Add to that claims of coercion, expired agreements and ethnic irredentism. We've got a recipe for perpetual dispute, but to understand why Afghans reject it, we need to go back to the 19th century and the imperial games that shaped Asia. To get why the British got involved, we have to talk about the Great Game, that shadowy rivalry between the British Empire and Tsarist Russia in the 1800s. Britain controlled India, their crown jewel, and they were paranoid about Russia expanding south from Central Asia. Afghanistan sat right in the middle, acting as a buffer zone to protect British interests from a potential Russian invasion. This wasn't just paranoia, there were real wars. The First Anglo-Afghan War in 1839 to 1842 ended in disaster for the British, with their army annihilated during a retreat from Kabul. Then came the Second Anglo-Afghan War in 1878 to 1880. The British won this one, forcing Afghanistan's Emir Sher Ali Khan to flee. His successor, Abdur Rahman Khan, often called the Iron Emir, signed the Treaty of Gandamak in 1879, which ceded control of Afghan foreign policy to Britain and handed over several districts, including parts of what would become the Durand Line areas. Abdur Rahman was no pushover, though. He unified Afghanistan internally, crushing rebellions and modernizing the army with British subsidies. But externally, Britain called the shots. By the 1890s, the British wanted a clearer boundary to define their sphere of influence and prevent Russian encroachment. Enter Sir Henry Mortimer Durand, the Foreign Secretary of British India. His mission? Negotiate a border that would secure British India's northwest frontier. In November 1893, after tense negotiations in Kabul, Durand and Abdur Rahman signed a one-page agreement. Yes, just one page that sketched out the border. It wasn't a precise map, it was more of a rough demarcation based on topography, tribal territories and strategic needs. The line zigzagged through the Hindu Kush mountains, the Suleiman Range and arid Baluchistan, often following ridge lines or watersheds. Here's where it gets messy. The agreement divided the Pashtun heartland right down the middle. Tribes like the Wazirs, Afridis and Mohmans found their lands split with kin on both sides. This wasn't accidental. The British used divide and rule tactics to weaken potential threats. Surveys to mark the line physically took place from 1894 to 1896, involving joint Afghan-British teams, but it was never fully demarcated with pillars everywhere due to the terrain's harshness. Abdur Rahman got something out of it. British protection against Russia, annual subsidies about 1.8 billion rupees, and arms imports, but many Afghans saw it as a sellout. Rumors persist that the agreement was meant to last only 100 years, expiring in 1993. Though historians debate this, the original text doesn't specify a duration. More critically, Afghans argue it was signed under duress. Britain had military superiority and controlled Afghanistan's foreign affairs, so Abdur Rahman had little choice. The line also created the Wakhan Corridor, that skinny finger of Afghan land jutting towards China, as a buffer to keep British and Russian territories from touching. Clever geopolitics, but it ignored local realities. Fast forward to today, no Afghan government, from monarchies to republics to the Taliban, has ever fully accepted the Durand Line. Why? Well, let's break it down. First, ethnic division. The Pashtuns, who make up about 40% of Afghanistan's population and a significant chunk of Pakistan, see the line as a colonial invention that fractures their unity. Pashtunwali, their tribal code, emphasizes loyalty to kin over states. The border disrupts trade, migration and family ties. Afghans often claim all lands west of the Indus River as historically theirs, dating back to the Durrani Empire under Ahmad Shah Abdali in the 18th century. Second, legal arguments. Afghans say the 1893 deal was coerced. Britain was the dominant power and Abdur Rahman signed to avoid invasion. It incorporated territories lost under the earlier Treaty of Gandamak, also seen as Force Plus. The agreement was with British India, not Pakistan. When Pakistan emerged in 1947, Afghanistan argued it didn't inherit the border automatically. In fact, Afghanistan was the only country to vote against Pakistan's UN membership in 1947 over this issue. Third, renewals and repudiations. The line was reaffirmed in 1905 after Abdur Rahman's death, in 1919 after the Third Anglo-Afghan War, which gave Afghanistan full independence via the Treaty of Rawalpindi, and in 1921, but in 1949 after a Pak airstrike on an Afghan village, Afghanistan's lawyer Jirga declared the line imaginary and voided all related agreements. They argued that independence from Britain in 1919 cancelled prior pacts. Fourth, Pashtunistan dreams. Many Afghans support creating an independent Pashtun state or reincorporating the areas into Afghanistan. This irredentism has fueled border skirmishes like in the 1950s and 1960s, and even the Taliban rejects the line. Pakistan counters that the line is internationally recognized, upheld by treaties, and that Afghanistan's de facto acceptance, like using it for trade, implies recognition. But for Afghans, it's a symbol of colonial injustice. When British India split in 1947, Pakistan got the Durand Line, but tensions exploded. Afghanistan pushed for Pashtun self-determination, leading to diplomatic breaks and proxy support for insurgents. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 and the subsequent wars made the border porous, a highway for mujahideen, refugees and later militants. In the 21st century, Pakistan has fenced much of the line to curb terrorism and smuggling, but Afghanistan protests, calling it a violation. Clashes continue to escalate. Taliban claims to have attacked on Pakistani posts. The US and NATO treated it as a de facto border during the Afghan war, but even they noted the paradox. Why respect a line Afghanistan denies? Today, with the Taliban back in power since 2021, the rejection persists. It's not just history, it affects trade, security and regional stability, especially with groups like the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan exploiting the ambiguity. The Durand Line is a textbook example of how colonial borders can haunt the present. Drawn hastily by the British to suit their empire, it ignored ethnic realities and sowed seeds of discord that persist over a century later. Afghans reject it because it feels imposed, divisive and invalid. A remnant of duress rather than mutual agreement. Could it ever be resolved? Maybe through bilateral talks or international arbitration. But with deep-seated grievances, it's unlikely soon. For now, it remains a flashpoint in a volatile region. Bottom line, what began as border clashes has now morphed into an open war declared by Pakistan's defense minister, with both amenities and military assets deployed across the Durand Line. With casualties mounting on both sides, including soldiers, militants and civilians, and with historical grievances deepening this escalation, could redraw security dynamics in South Asia. The Durand Line, an entity born of colonial geopolitics, remains at the center of one of the world's most complex and dangerous border disputes. For now, diplomacy seems distant. The guns, though, seem louder than ever.
Another conflict traces back to British, the 2,611-kilometer AfPak border tensions. Recognized by Pakistan, disputed by Taliban. Pakistan Pashtun genocide worsens case. Here's why Durand Line is central to AfPak war.